Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Today we're going to go through our Travel SEO report that we've launched this morning, and I think there'll be a link in the chat box so that you can all see this if you haven't already. And what we're going to do is there's kind of three sections to this. Section one is I'll do a quick screen share so that you can see what the report looks like, just as a very quick overview. We'll then have a quick kind of presentation from Steve from SISTRIX, who's going to go through the findings of our reports in terms, well, more the methodology of how we've come up with this. And then we're going to do a Q&A with the panel in terms of what's been happening with travel over the last 12 months and what we see happening in 2021 and beyond. So let's do some quick intros first and then dig into this. And I'll go around the screen as I see it, and I realize it may be different to everyone else. But yeah, Steve, do you want to start by just doing a quick intro?
Certainly, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Paine from SISTRIX. For those of you who don't know, SISTRIX, we provide SEO data as a software as a service product. And I'm one of the marketing managers here dealing with the English language content, sitting here in Bonn in Germany.
Okay, and Colin?
Yeah, I'm Colin Carter from weathertotravel.com, and we are a research tool online for holidaymakers, travelers to decide when and where to go on a holiday for the best weather, and lots of other things as well. So yeah, that's me.
Perfect. Tahir, who is on mute. It had to happen.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Tahir. I'm from aph.com. We are airport parking and hotel provider for the people who are traveling for the holidays. And I'm online marketing manager looking after the marketing channels, specifically digital marketing. That's me.
Great. Perfect. And Felix?
Hi, everyone. My name is Felix. I'm the Director of Inbound Marketing at HomeToGo. HomeToGo is the largest vacation rental search engine in the world. We aggregate lots of vacation rental supply. We are Berlin-based, and I myself are based in London.
Perfect. Hannah?
Hi everyone, my name's Hannah Butcher. I'm the head of SEO at Resignal. I've been working in SEO for almost 12 years and have had a lot of experience on the travel industry side of things, working with everything from airlines, hotels, and travel operators as well.
Great. And finally, Rob.
Afternoon, everyone. My name's Rob. I'm the head of SEO over at Travel Supermarket, which is a package holiday price comparison website. So think Money Supermarket, just with travel and more orange and less terrible TV ads.
Exactly. Perfect. And I should probably introduce myself. So I'm Kevin from Resignal. Also, we have Anna, who is our marketing manager. So a big thank you to Anna, who's done a lot of the hard work in pulling this report together. And as you'll see, there's quite a lot of information there. So I'm going to do a quick screen share just so people can see this, but we're really going to spend the time kind of digging into what we found. So just to confirm, can everyone see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so you can access this obviously resignal.com/travel SEO report. Last week I did a video interview with Will Hawkley, who's the global head of leisure and hospitality at KPMG. And this was very interesting to find the learnings of what's happened in 2020, some of the economic factors and the impact that that's had, both for hospitality within the UK, but also what that means for travel, both domestically, but also in terms of European travel and long haul. Essentially, the key findings probably wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear, to be honest, but to share what KPMG are predicting at this stage is summer is likely to be more domestic travel. European travel will return, but they're not really expecting too much until kind of late summer, maybe June, July, but even that felt quite optimistic. It's kind of late summer, early autumn. There's more of a kind of cautious optimism, I would say. Things are coming back, but don't rush just yet. long haul, the view was actually this is likely to be 2022. And if it happens before then, great, but kind of not really trying to set expectations beyond that. And business travel would return afterwards, but there's a serious question mark over whether business travel will return, certainly to the same extent that it used to before in terms of face-to-face meetings, conference events. I think there's absolutely a demand for kind of in-person events as opposed to online. But again, whether that will be necessary at the same scale as what happened in the past remains to be seen. But some really interesting findings. You can click here and there's a full write-up and summary of that as well. In terms of the travel expert view, and we'll be going through some of these questions with our experts this afternoon. There's lots of information here, so big thank you to our experts to pull this together in terms of questions of what's happened, what's the impact been, how has that changed the investments and how SEO is viewed within the business, and also what's the outlook and view moving forward. And beyond that, we then have our league table, which SISTRIX very kindly helped us to pull together. So we have 200 domains that we've analysed and we've scored in terms of visibility. You can see the difference month on month, year on year, in terms of who are the biggest kind of winners in this space and who maybe has dropped in visibility over a 12-month period. And we've also categorised that, which is very tricky in itself in terms of how to categorize this, but we've put our best efforts behind looking at what we would consider to be the user journey and the main products that people are purchasing from a travel perspective, and then what that looks like in terms of their own visibility. So again, kind of everyone can look at this and drill down much more closely if it's a sector that you operate in. But yeah, like I say, I think let's jump straight into kind of the bulk of the information. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and we'll then get Steve's slides on screen and go through kind of how we pulled this all together. Oh, Steve, now you're on mute. No, still muted.
I'll mute. It had to happen. Been pretty good over the last 12 months with that, but it had to happen, didn't it?
Exactly.
Multitasking. I'm not sure if I'm going to give you all the information you need, but I'll certainly give you the important stuff, which is really the background to the data. And once you understand that, it helps you to understand what the report is talking about, because you could interpret the data a number of different ways. Before I start, Kevin, I watched the video with Will Hawkley, sorry. Mm-hmm. Really interesting, good stuff, and I would recommend anyone in the industry to watch that. Anyone working as an SEO or a digital marketing person, for anyone in that industry, there's some good insights in there. It's a little UK outward view, in my opinion. I'm sitting here in the EU. I notice those sort of things, but it's interesting. Right, let's get on to the data and where it came from and what is the visibility index. So those of you that joined for the retail or the e-commerce one we did last year, was it last year already? You'll understand the data, but it's important that you get an idea of what's going on here. So let's start. SISTRIX gathers SERPs on a very large scale. And when I say large scale, I mean many millions per day across 30 countries. We gather them down to the top 100, and then we pivot that data and trying to work out which domains are appearing in a set of 1 million keywords as a kind of footprint figure. And we called this the visibility index. There are weightings on keyword search volume and obviously the position of a keyword that appears in the search. So what you end up with is a history of data, the visibility index graph that you can see on the screen there, which gives you an idea of the footprint, the visibility, or the shop front space of a domain in UK Google search over time. And there is TripAdvisor there over the last 10 years. We pivot that also into data to try and rebuild the ranking structure of the website. So we can actually dive down into, from top level down to directory level, down to URL level, show the hosts that are ranking within a domain. And if you're looking for competitor information, this is very interesting, especially when people like booking.com have lovely structures which show hotel, city, and landmarks. You can pull out some really good information on that. We also gather the structure of the SERP as well, and extrapolate the intent, what Google thinks the intent of the search is, whether it's a no, whether it's a website visit, whether it's a visit in person, or whether it's a do kind of intent. There's some more of that directory data, and the visibility index is there, and we also show you information like keywords in the top 100, keywords in the top 10. So the important thing is we're talking about visibility, footprint, and I mentioned shopfront space. And I think this is the best way to visualize what's going on here. And let me just bring up this image. This is actually from retail that we did last year, Kevin. You'll recognize this one, but it shows a high street. It shows you the relevant, the respective shopfront sizes for domains. So obviously a few elephants in the room there, Amazon and eBay. And then you see the relative sizes of some of the domains, and going down to people like domains like Lidl and Caramillan, which if it was a actual shop front size, you wouldn't be able to get through the front door. Now, a lot of that visibility does depend on the product ranges that are being shown. A classic example is Sweaty Betty, who do a very good job in a very, very fine niche. Obviously, they have an extremely small shop front space. But the important thing is this visibility is not traffic. The traffic occurs when people walk down that high street. Now, if it's raining on that high street, there might be very few people, but the actual shop fronts don't change. And this is the important thing to note with the visibility index. The sizes don't change much. And in fact, when we look back on those travel domains, not much really changed. Those domains were there. What was happening in terms of people reporting traffic is that, well, traffic may have been increasing. There may have been other things going on in terms of news that changed focus, search activities changed as well. So the changes that do occur, I just mentioned a few, which affect the shopfront size, are things like if shops close. And we've seen a few of those, unfortunately, in the travel, also in the e-commerce space last year. This 10 blue links is an elastic space. You don't get one blue link shuttering down with a bit of graffiti on the front of it. It actually backfills with the other domains around it. So closed shops can affect the visibility of other shops. I called these Google Billboards. It's information that, it's that guy walking up and down that high street with information with an arrow saying COVID free jabs here or COVID information here, distractions across that SERP, which can change the click rate on that SERP. Pop-up shops, I called them, images and maps, information from Google, news, jobs, all that sort of stuff. The flights, obviously, flights booking and the maps are very relevant to travel industry. And then pop-up shops, let's call them that, ads people can pay to put shops within that high street. Also, the thing that will change the size of visibility is where you change your product range. So, for example, a good one in Germany right now is that Aldi have started to offer COVID home tests, which is going to be a nightmare for Google to try and work out whether they're really worth ranking for, COVID medical terms, but that's what's happening. They're expanding their product range, and that will obviously change their potential size of footprint because they're just changing the product ranges, they're expanding. So one of the things that's happened for a lot of us over the last year, and also for us at SISTRIX, is we've changed our priorities. We've actually started to look at content a little bit more. We've had chance to look at background content, update it, create new content, fill gaps, look at the competition, all that sort of stuff. We have to remember that more content doesn't increase the number of links on the top 10. It doesn't create 12 blue links, it's still 10. So what happens is the quality of the search rises. This is great for the user, great for Google's search. But more importantly is if we start to think about new content or very, very crafted content tailored on user intent and sub-intent and trends, and possibly doing that thing that, and I hate quoting it, Steve Jobs, skating to where the puck is going to go, meeting that demand before it's there. Those are where the opportunities lie, of course. So it's important to use this intent, to use that SERP information, to use all the information you can find out about these keywords to craft content correctly. I call it sub-intent. We've worked a lot here on this recently. Intent is one thing, but reading the SERPs, interpreting the SERPs, understanding what's really going on within that SERP, what Google thinks the user want, and watching changes over time as well is really important. So it leads me to showing off some of the data that we have. As we collect the data, we collect the format of it, and we reconstruct that in a table on our website, where we'll show you what's going on. Now, this is I think probably canal boat tours or something like that, or boat holidays. This is the 23rd of the 3rd. This is today. As you can see, the first organic appears way down the list there on a mobile phone. That's probably going to be at least one scroll down. If we go back to last year, we can see that the organic appeared quite high up. So there's been a change in the format of that SERP, and this is really important information for anyone doing marketing on organic search to think about not only the intent of the SERP, sub-intent of the SERP, but the format of the SERP. Do you have a chance to get in there? I feel like I'm showing too much of our own data there, but there's information like mobile and desktop split, the ratio of traffic that flows through mobile and desktop, whether you've got traffic potentially coming in from other countries. And importantly, if we go down to the actual SERP itself and look at the clicks, going back there, 18,300 total search volume. In fact, if you're at position 6, you're only going to get under 1,000 of those clicks. So this understanding that SERP format is important to understanding whether you can compete within that. And that's the canals home there. I'm going to stop right there because I feel like I've just shown too much SISTRIX data. The important message is that shop front size. That's what Kevin and Anna have been measuring in this great report. And well done on categorizing everything, Kevin, and Anna, because that is extremely difficult. I always call back the car example, where a car website is actually sometimes falling into a finance category. It's not car information, it's finance and insurance and that sort of stuff. If you need to get a hold of me, we're at SISTRIX on Twitter, and I should plug it, the free trial. If you want to have a look at some of that data, there's the little URL you can use to get to a free 14-day trial, and I won't leave that up on the window too long.
No, thanks for that, Steve. Really appreciate it. It just helps to show kind of the credibility of the SISTRIX database in terms of how this is calculated, because often with these reports, it's not always clear in terms of how that scorecard is created, and we've decided in this case that we think SISTRIX is a great way to measure organic visibility, and then yeah, as Steve says, we have put some work into categorizing so that we're trying to compare like for like, which isn't the perfect option in terms of like, there's never a perfect option. There's always overlaps in terms of what can be listed in there, but it helps to drill down into that data so that it's not just comparing everyone in the 200 against each other. You can then start to segment as well. So no, really appreciate that background. I think we'll kick off and we'll go through some of the key questions that we had in terms of putting together the reports. And then if anyone has questions, please use the chat functions. I think there's a Q&A where you can ask your questions, and I'll keep an eye on that, and I will flag anything to our panelists and put those questions forward. So if there's anything that you think comes up to do with travel SEO in general, or the report, then yeah, feel free to ask and we'll make sure that's covered. Otherwise, let's kick things off. And the first question is, how has your marketing and SEO strategy changed since the pandemic? So I realize we've lost Rob. Hopefully he will return. But I don't know if anyone wanted to kick off on this. Maybe just looking through the report, Felix had quite a detailed answer. So I don't know if you would mind maybe going through what you're seeing in terms of the shift over the last 12 months in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've been seeing since first COVID hit last year, which is pretty much 12 months ago, was like this roller coaster and all of a sudden like, just plunging almost 90% or so. And as a vacation rental player, certainly that's true for other players of the travel industry equally. What I think we changed there with like demand decreasing so much was that we pulled back on marketing, paid marketing quite heavily. As kind of a mostly meta player, we have quite a high paid marketing footprint, and so we dried that down pretty instantly. And I think as a result of it as well, became even more data driven. So Steve said it pretty well. Kind of look at the demand where that's going. And obviously in the first phase of lockdown, it was mostly about making sure you keep your cost base intact and the business up and running and the lights on. But as soon as, I think that's something that was really interesting, as soon as we saw kind of March passing, April coming, we saw this increase in demand again, which should turn out as this like V-shaped curve almost. I think we've touched on a few trends as well in terms of travel demand pattern shifts. We've seen people travel more domestically. We definitely saw people just can't wait to get out and travel again, and we saw that demand surging. So in terms of SEO, in terms of content creation, we try to look into these demand patterns, understand where customers are going, and then building out kind of those landing pages in a little bit of a better way. We try to reutilize content as best as possible, meaning that if we create some content for a given destination that we know will be in demand, we try to then also reuse that content in, for example, CRM and mailouts. For customer retention, we use that for on-site communication. We certainly use the demand data for kind of ramping up paid again in a more targeted way. I think some opportunities we saw on the content side is that with people almost uncertainty, or still being quite uncertain about restrictions and news changing on a daily basis, almost on where you can go and where you can't go. We realized that it is even more fundamental to have a kind of a technology platform that allows you to quite quickly. And so for example, in snippets, I think we've seen working quite well. And not only on kind of the SEO side, but then across the board into the product side of things as well, offer as much as a frictionless experience as possible. And we have a flexible date search, for example, as well, where customers can get that flexibility, I think, by just finding a week anywhere in a few months' time in summer. So I would say in summary, a lot more data driven, a lot more demand driven, and very responsive, I would say, on the lookout, always trying to find if there's any opportunities demand-wise coming our way.
That's great. And I think you mentioned, was there a 70% drop initially? Can you share kind of how much of that has been clawed back, or it doesn't have to be exact numbers, but it'd be good to get a sense of how that's progressed?
Of course. So the initial drop was quite substantial. It was even more than 70% in traffic, certainly. I think also to Steve's point, it wasn't a matter of a kind of ranking loss or anything. It was purely demand pulling back. People had obviously other things in mind than going on vacation at that point. But then that's what I described as it certainly changed really, really quickly. I think as soon as kind of the rebound, as we saw it hit, we saw traffic increases of even like 100% plus in some of the locales. A little bit different across the different countries. I think the US and the European market, there might be a little different. The US has, I think, historically been domestic heavy anyway. So that shift wasn't as dramatic, but the major rebound we saw in European locales, in Germany, in the UK, and in other markets certainly was around more domestic searches. So that went up to like probably 80% or so at some point. People travel domestically, also leading to a situation where all of a sudden the top locations, the top destinations were booked out. And that then again created a good kind of PR opportunity in order to guide customers and point customers based on the demand data we were seeing to other kind of off the beaten track, I would say, destinations, and help them find a place. So quite even a service customer oriented PR opportunity behind this. And then with, I think, the end of summer, we saw a bit of that steep curve, kind of this steep climb kind of dropping and fading out a little bit again. And we are now at traffic levels that are healthier than they were when COVID hit, and anticipating kind of the same surge in demand again, almost repeating that curve going into summer now, because we certainly see, and I think the UK announcement was a really good example. Once the step line was released, traffic was through the roof for the UK locale, and I think people's will to travel is unbroken. Everyone is trying to leave and finally leave their house and see something else, meet some friends. So yeah, we certainly hope that's going to be possible again soon.
Definitely. No, that's really good. And I think it's a common trend in terms of the paid search budgets being cut. We definitely found that across a number of the experts in terms of what's happening. I know Tahir's joined us on a number of calls kind of that we've had checking in with our in-house Slack community, that if anyone would like to join, and definitely kind of let us know afterwards. But I think that's been quite interesting seeing your journey, Tahir, of kind of early days of furlough and kind of learning and then watching and seeing what's going on. But kind of, I think the very lean approach of let's make sure we have a business at the other end of this has, definitely, I mean, travel's been hard hit, understandably. So, it'd be good to hear your thoughts in terms of how COVID kind of changed how search marketing is viewed.
It has changed dramatically for us, to be honest. Unfortunately, we haven't seen the market coming back anywhere near where we were last year, basically year before that. And if you look at the January year on year, I will just give you an example of one keywords, airport parking, we are about 91% down. We normally used to get around 59,000 searches a month, and we are now around 5,000, and it's pretty badly hit. And unfortunately, we have to stop everything. Most of us still are furlough. We made a lot of plans, a lot of changes, but then again, we have to redo everything after a month or 2 months, because every time there's a new update from government, everything changes. And if we have few bookings coming in, they will be canceled. We know most of them are getting canceled. So we have tried to adapt as much as we can by offering all the product as flexible. We refund all the money to the customers who had the booking with us previously. We try to keep the kind of our existing customer base happy as much as we can without damaging our business. And like you said, try to stay, how can we basically survive through this, which is obviously initially nobody thought is going to be, well, today is 1 year on 23rd of March. It's a yearly anniversary now. So when it was announced. So unfortunately, we have to stop our PPC campaigns. Content, obviously, creation was stopped because we have nobody working. SEO, in terms of SEO, we have few people, just basically technical stuff, improving the speed of the website, where we can do bits and bobs, and obviously making sure the content we don't have, set the redirects and stuff like that. Other than that, unfortunately, we have to pause all the search activities. And we just hoping this 12th of April, there is a big announcement about aviation industry. And we are hoping just that there's something positive in that. So then we can start looking at somewhere, like you mentioned, June, July, start seeing some sort of activities. And we are hoping, again, it's just, so many things can change nowadays in a day to day, that we will get a stronger winter than normally we have.
Right. Which makes sense with restrictions being lifted. People are hanging on, that maybe not booking just yet, but towards the end of the year, I think it makes sense that they're doing that. I know some of Hannah's answers in the document was around kind of reactive content, which I think kind of leads into that quite well. So it's looking at what's happening in terms of restrictions and adapting, but also trying to think ahead for future destinations and planning of where people should go as well.
Yeah, so I've got my bit of a personal story with kind of like when COVID started last year. I was actually working in-house for a ferry ticket reseller, so European ferries, kind of long distance, short distance, so cross channel or between Greek islands. And my own role was affected by COVID at that time. And I was sort of made redundant due to the onset. Within, I think, the first week of lockdown, ticket sales were down 60%. And the thing that was on the rise was customer service inquiries for people wanting refunds. I had to refund my own booking. I was due to travel by ferry in the summer that year too, so I was supposed to travel in June. So there's obviously that kind of like initial phase of everything changing. No one really sure how long the restrictions were going to last for. People prematurely cancelling their bookings and all that kind of worry surrounding that. And again, not really kind of seeing that coming back to the same levels. I think maybe ferries, just due to the nature of the type of travel that isn't a quick simple flight, for example, sort of hopping from one country to another. Some of them, I mean, the ferry that I had booked was like an overnight one, so it would have been 20 hours on the same boat. So obviously you'd kind of be restricted to your room. So there's some sort of difficulties surrounding like the forms of travel. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like what happens going forward about the ways that people come to travel. But as a company, in terms of like the content that you're putting out, it just means having to be like very kind of empathetic to the customer, because we know that there's a keenness for people to get back and start traveling again. But it's providing kind of like the right recommendations that are safe, but also to, if people aren't going to book right now, it's like, how can you try and help them think about future travel, and just providing all the information that they need, and just linking them to any external resources they may need as well, in terms of like travel corridors and restrictions and things like that. And are they going to need to quarantine upon return? So all of these things are going to be factors in people. There is keenness to book. I mean, I myself have booked a trip for August, which may be a bit hopeful. I had one booked for June. I've had to move that one. So there's this keenness even for people sort of involved in the industry who know how difficult it is, and people are keen to sort of get back traveling. So it's just really staying up to date with everything and making sure that the information is clear and updated as regularly as possible.
Absolutely. One thing that was quite interesting that came out of the interview I did with Will from KPMG last week was that a number of people are double booking, and they're booking a European holiday and a UK holiday, both on good cancellation terms, and then they're just going to see what happens, because it's very unpredictable right now. And that actually sounds like quite a smart option. So you have a bit of a backup plan. Plan A, let's go abroad. Plan B, let's have somewhere else kind of up your sleeve. And I think looking back now, it might even be too late now, because certainly from a domestic point of view, things have been getting booked up very quickly, to the point that I think it's now very expensive. There's also different rules and regulations around quarantining, vaccine passports. Of, do you need to firstly have the vaccine? Secondly, quarantine when you return into the country. That could cost you up to £2,000 worth of fees to stay in a hotel while you return, which obviously isn't appealing for many people. But yeah, Colin, have you got anything to add in terms of, I'd like to touch upon maybe going back 12 months ago at first, of what you saw and how kind of damaging, I guess, that was really from the early perspective through to where we are now, and what that's potentially looking like as an outlook for 2021.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it coming a little bit, because we cover every country of the world. We saw when the pandemic started in China, and then into places like Iran, and then eventually into Italy. We could see the drop off in traffic at that level. So we could see the granular level. We knew that it was going to get bigger and bigger. Obviously, when it started to get into places like the Canary Islands, it definitely hit home, I think, for a lot of people in the kind of holiday space. Yeah, we saw brands kind of pull back pretty quickly in terms of their marketing spend. Advertising disappeared, and like most travel companies, we just kind of battened down the hatches to kind of get through that first period. We we sat down. I remember the conversation, and we looked at kind of what the plan was. Obviously, about the same time they were looking at the furlough scheme, which we took on board, and we just tried to minimize costs. We looked at trying to reduce any marketing spend to almost zero. We knew that we had to keep the lights on, and we needed to work on keeping the website running right through. But we just had to kind of manage it. We saw quite a lot of brands kind of get the messaging wrong in early lockdown, because there was a lot of stuff going around. When it's all over, where would you want to go? People were dying at that stage at quite an alarming rate. And I think there was quite a bite back on brands who were doing that. And we decided to just go very, very softly into it. And we invested quite a lot of time into what we thought was going to be our way out. And that was pretty much what, as Hannah's just mentioned, which is looking at, trying to improve our domestic content. So really kind of trying to flesh out that and make sure that we've always tried to focus on the holidays overseas, because for us, the weather is much more of a factor if you're going away to a place you don't know. But we've always picked up traffic from domestic destinations. So we looked at kind of developing that and making that the best it could be, expanding into neighboring countries, because we also thought that the kind of drive holiday would be something that would also potentially come back, because obviously you're cocooned a little bit in your car, and then maybe staying in a rental property would protect you a little bit. So we expanded out to UK, Ireland, France. Obviously, we need to see exactly how that pans out. And then the other thing that we kind of started to work on is to really try and answer that question about travel advice and reassuring customers what it was going to be like to travel in the future. So we've been doing a lot of work on COVID resources, statistics around rates and vaccinations, so that actually if you're then deciding, where's the best place for me to go in August, hopefully we can answer those questions, so that we've got that in hand. Unfortunately, we're also living in a time where there's huge amount of misinformation and scaremongering in the press. So everything kind of pivots on a sixpence when there's another government minister kind of telling people not to book, or booking holidays are illegal. Well, they're not. It's the holidays are illegal. So we've seen a lot of changes. It's been quite fluid. I guess one of the challenges for us has been to try and stay ahead of the curve, and look at what's going to happen. I've learned all these new terms. I think even this week, we've had, obviously, staycations has been around for a few years, but now we've got seacations, which is exciting new product for this year. Sailing around in a massive cruise ship around the UK. And the one I heard yesterday was it I can't remember what it was now. It was kind of the idea of a nomad, but a promad. So the idea of a professional nomad who was basically running their business remotely, moving around the world. And, and I'm just thinking, my goodness me, there's just so many of these terms that you can badger around. But, what we've just tried to do is really try and be very fluid and dynamic with our content, focus on what we think people are looking for without putting huge amounts of resources into what that is, and really to try and kind of answer those questions around, getting people traveling again. It doesn't look like international travel will probably be back until July. That's the latest I've heard, at least, with some kind of traffic light system. Yep. We want to avoid this kind of stop-start yo-yo effect of being on a list and off a list and on a list and off a list. And I know that there was a story last week that I think Germany said that it was okay to go to Mallorca over Easter. So apparently they sold all the flights out because there was such a surge of demand, people trying to escape to Mallorca. And I think the latest that I heard was that then Angela Merkel was going to put quarantine or testing system. So now all the hotels in Mallorca are worried that all these bookings are going to get cancelled again. So there's this kind of massive kind of knock-on effect for businesses, both in the host country and also in the country where people are traveling from, that's kind of causing this chaos in the travel industry. And, you know, we're somewhere in the middle trying to kind of make our way of steering our path. But, you know, hopefully something like domestic travel is going to get us through that. And then long term, I think we'll get back to international.
That makes a lot of sense. I see Steve nodding along, based in Germany, to see. Actually, Steve, I don't know if there's anything you've got to share on the differences you've seen of Germany versus the UK, just in general, not even kind of from a search perspective, but if there's anything that you've seen that kind of might help the audience just to see what this looks like from the
Sure.
Germany perspective.
The one thing that really springs to mind is that it's a two-way journey. It is not a one-way thing. When you're thinking about your journeys, you have to think about the back leg as well. My outward leg to the UK to go and see my parents is a non-starter at the moment because of the set of tests that I have to take. I think the basic set is 270 plus another 120 if you want to get out after 6 days. Plus you got to think about the test you have when you come back. So you're at 400 there, plus my tests going out and possibly my test when I come back to Germany. So I'm up to 700 euros there on just tests, plus the 10 days, which means I'd have to stay for a minimum of 10 days before I can see more than just my parents. If you're thinking of summer holidays and that 10 days is there, it's going to shorten the summer holidays by 1 week because you can't, I think you mentioned this before, Kevin, can't keep your kids away from school afterwards. So it's a lot more considerations. It's not a matter of just getting out to a country. It's the getting back as well, which could be a problem if you're out and something changes, which is what I would be worried about. Then you're in trouble, you know, with jobs, with childcare and that sort of thing. Felix, you're in Germany as well, aren't you?
Well, I'm based in London now, but I'm
okay.
German originally, and most of the company is based in Berlin. So I closely follow what's happening there. And
yes, the New Yorker story was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've not to open up like a COVID political discussion now, but at the same time, I feel like when COVID first hit Germany, I think, you know, in terms of numbers and cases, Germany was quite at the forefront of handling it really well. And now there's lots of back and forth and discussions based on obviously what's right to do. Should we open up in Easter or not? Pull back on, you know, you have the situation where you can go to Mallorca at the same time. You're not allowed to go to the seaside if you're in another German state. I think this increasingly creates kind of frustration with the population, at least what I hear from my friends, just that side, as well as obviously everyone that's running a travel business, including kind of all the hotels, all the vacation rental homeowners. They can't really plan, and they have to also react very, very short notice. And I think the main problem is that while Germany is like a federal state, meaning you have kind of the 16 states that all kind of have their own say, and even though kind of the government can give some guidance, there has to be a discussion on how this is implemented in the states. And I think what's creating the frustration is that all these regulations are somewhat different. So Bavaria has different set of regulations compared to Berlin, different than Hamburg or any of the other ones. And I think that makes it even more difficult to plan accordingly, and also to just get around and wrap your mind around any next steps there. So
absolutely, a domestic holiday might actually be a county holiday or a state holiday here rather than a countrywide holiday.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as a trend that what we're looking at, bringing this back into search, is it actually doesn't start with search anymore. It starts with what are the regulations, what's going to happen in terms of things opening up. And it goes back and forth. I think there's another way of seeing this in the early stages. We found search demand gave a lot of clues about when people were going to book next, because if you're on the board of a travel company and you're looking at bookings, then actually waiting until those bookings come through is when that consumer confidence is like really coming back. Whereas actually beforehand, it's more the awareness of people are searching. I think something that we saw, this was actually in the talk with Will last week as well, is a lot of people want to go to kind of like the Maldives, the Indian Ocean, Spain, Greece, etc. right now. And you're seeing that within the search demand. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. But people are searching for destinations and they're thinking ahead, and they might even be thinking 12 months, 24 months ahead, but they want to travel. The demand is there. In a lot of cases, some people have saved some money by not traveling and maybe not commuting and eating out and some of the other things as well, that I think when this does return, people will absolutely want to do it. But it's definitely the marketer's job role feels like you need to watch the news more than you ever would have in before in the past. So does that sound fair? Like, kind of open to anyone to answer, but it does feel that way to me.
I was going to say, as a consumer, I mean, as even a few months ago, starting to look for like potential trips for 2022. One of the issues that I was coming into was flight schedules just being restricted to 2021 and not being opened up to the following year. And as someone who was looking and kind of wanted to express my interest, I want to know when I can start booking for these flights. Like, am I able to make a deposit or sign up to note my interest? Maybe there can be some sort of email newsletter that comes to me and lets me know when the flight schedules have opened up, anything like that, really. So it was quite frustrating to not be able to kind of like cement something, even just to kind of understand dates and just starting to do the research phase. We all know that in travel, we all want to spend a lot of time picking the right place to stay. Is it the right time of year to go? Is the weather going to be good? What do we need to bring? So there's a load of that research that we can be doing now as consumers, and as marketers, we can start like supplying that information for future travel. So that was just one of the things I noted. So I'm still left frustrated not being able to book something for next year, because I would like to do that like ahead of costs kind of increasing over time, but I'm just going to have to wait for now.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Colin might have some answers on this one.
Well, I might be able to tell you about the weather. Well, maybe.
Are we going to get a sunny UK summer, or is it no?
Almost certainly. No, I mean, I was going to say that, a couple of points there. I think trade news, I think, is probably better than the kind of mass media, because I think they're more likely to tell you what's going on the ground. So that's certainly a top tip in terms of just seeing what the trends are in terms of what the travel companies are seeing. I think it looks like larger basket sizes. We're seeing that in terms of people booking bigger holidays, whether that's longer holidays or another term, bleisure holiday, where they're mixing business and leisure. They're going to have a week work and a week in the sun and
I used to call it a holiday.
Yeah, exactly. There's a workstation, whatever you want to call it. So whether people go for longer or they're upgrading their hotel to have slightly nicer room or better flights, or this idea of having a multi-generational holiday, I'm not sure whether that's something that's appealing to everybody, but I think for some it will be trying to do something a bit bigger, a bit better, certainly for those people who have maybe saved some money. Not everybody has. There are a lot of people who are out of work or being furloughed and lost money. So I think the trends are there in terms of what people are looking for. I don't know whether the cruises will be back in this level, but I think certainly the travel industry is trying to kind of kickstart things. But I think more and more travel companies are also hedging their bets and saying, we don't really know what summer 21 is going to be like. But we're going to try and sell it. But we're also going to try and sell 2022, 2023. We're going to look in further seasons. It might not help with the cash flow now, but as a business, if we've got future bookings, that's going to at least put us in a slightly better place than not having those bookings. Yeah. So there's a bit of stick or twist kind of mentality, and I think I think the bigger brands are more likely to be able to ride that out. It's probably the mid-tier holiday companies that are going to be bigger, a bigger risk to kind of going bust. I mean, I think that I even saw a few names on your report of companies that have now already gone. The businesses have failed. So I think there will probably be more in the coming weeks. I think the next 6 weeks will be kind of crucial for those kind of companies.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We've got 10 minutes left, so I want to just open up to any questions. Feel free to ask in the Q&A. There was one that's come in that I'll open now. I've got a feeling this was during Felix's explanation if you wanted to cover this, but feel free if anyone else has something to chip in as well. But it was in terms of paid search, isn't there an opportunity for a reset where brands can avoid bidding wars, where Google is the only winner?
Yeah, maybe not a direct answer, but for sure what we've been seeing is when everyone pulled back from the auction, that even after like the rebound hit, not all the companies that used to be strong spenders on paid search on Google Ads, for example, came back to the same extent, meaning that you could actually get traffic more efficiently because then the auction for a given query was not as competitive anymore. And then I think that had recovered going into summer, where then most of the bigger OTAs came back as well, the smaller niche vertical players as well came back into the auction. I think that was a small window of opportunity where if you had a good business case of still a functional business model, and you were willing to invest, for example, into back then 2021 or now 2022 travel, and it's about getting the customer and acquiring that booking rather than being like having to have the cash flow right away. I think that it creates an opportunity window, and I think that's something that has to be looked at a granular level. Is really individual based on the industry, on your business. But yeah, for sure, something we saw as well. Auctions getting cheaper for a little while. And that window was kind of limited.
Yeah, that makes sense. And because it is an auction, so if there's less bidders, the price is going to be lower, and likewise on the flip side. So no, that's really interesting. One of the other questions that we did ask in the report was, what different trends do you see occurring in customer behavior as a result of the pandemic? And I think we've maybe touched on that a little bit, but I don't know, Tahir, is there anything that you'd like to add? It seems certainly from an airport parking perspective, it feels a bit like a waiting game of where you need people to be flying in order to serve them. Otherwise,
Yes.
maybe not too much you can do other than be patient, be there for them, and it's a bit of a waiting game.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't control the behavior. We don't control the demand. We just basically a supply chain. So if something happened on top end, then it's going to impact us. In terms of, I don't know, it's really hard one to see what we're going to do, where we're going to go. Airport parking is, we are in middle. We're kind of not in middle, but parking is, we are struggling with the demand.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, and that makes sense. It's something that I'm not sure you can accelerate. It's just not in your control.
No, it's not. Unfortunately, no. Yeah, I wish we had any kind of, and never produce content and stuff like that, but we can't. Everything again depends on the government announcement and how the pandemic is gonna shape up going forward.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Another question that we've just got through the chat, and feel free to keep, we've still got kind of like 5 minutes or so left, so feel free to keep asking questions, this is something I hadn't considered, but are there any insights on how much damage was done to email marketing on the assumption that there's maybe been quite a lot of unsubscribes from people kind of over the last 12 months? I don't know if anyone has some insights to share on that. It certainly wasn't something that I've considered too much, but it does sound like a fair point that maybe people aren't looking to subscribe to travel email marketing in the way that they would have before.
But Hannah is. He just gave a great example of someone wanting to subscribe. So maybe there's an opportunity there.
True.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say, I think there's probably different reasons for subscribing. I think in terms of, yes, you probably don't want to be served a load of content that's inaccessible to you now, but certainly in terms of like future planning, or even just, changing the tone of newsletters to incorporate the updated guidelines and regulations regarding travel, and seeing it as more of a kind of digesting the news into something that's easy for people and relevant for their sort of travel history. So, using kind of any database information that you have on sort of like, like typical flight paths they may take, or popular destination countries. So just using that and just being a bit more creative with the way that you sort of segment the data, and creating newsletters that sort of are relevant for them. Maybe less with the kind of put it in your face, you can't do this right now type content, but yeah, there's certainly room for that for the future.
Well, even just on your earlier point, if this is an e-commerce store and there's an out of stock product, you might be able to set an alert to say when this is coming back. It would be great if you could say, when is this flight going to be available for this date range in 2022? And if you got an alert, Hannah, in your inbox today, there's a good chance by the weekend that may be booked.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm still waiting for that. It saves me from having to manually go and check the flight schedules and seeing whether they're updated, and, you know, just having like the price alerts as well is really helpful. So yeah, I think, and this is quite a lot of the larger companies are guilty of this as well. So I was looking for transatlantic flights, and yet a lot of them just had zero information about when the flight schedules would even be available. So having that kind of, you know, sign me up, let me know,
Yeah.
I'd be straight on there.
Because I assume you're only checking that like 3 or 4 times a day, right?
I haven't looked for a couple of weeks, but yeah, I think just the kind of like timelines. That's the thing. It's just giving people a little bit of something to work with, just so you're not putting the onus on the customer to do all of the hard work.
Exactly.
I think the problem with it is a little bit is that information is just not available.
Yeah.
You know, that it's changing so quickly,
Yeah.
and a lot of the companies just don't know. They just don't know. They haven't got guidance from their governments. They don't know what's going on in destinations, so they can't plan. And there's been the whole discussion about, you know, okay, we've had over tourism, but now we've kind of got under tourism, and there's a lot of businesses in destinations who, you know, desperately need people to come and travel, and they can't survive without them. So you're going to have this surge of bookings whenever that happens, and then everyone will be clamoring for the best deal on the flight to you know, transatlantic flights to New York or whatever. I mean, I think, you know, it will happen, but it's just going to take a bit of time. And I think in terms of a trend, I think there will be a lot of people just looking for the best deal. You know, they'll just be looking to get away to wherever they can, be it Turkey or Seychelles or whatever their bucket is.
I think most travelers, I think, would take anything they can get. I think it's just keeping an eye on what is available. One of the interesting things, again, from the KPMG interview was the sad angle of 2022. Some companies may not know if they're going to be operating in 2022. I know TUI was a good example of, they've had a big kind of, I don't know if this is a grant or a loan from the German government, but there's been a number of situations where there's been, certainly in the UK, people are delaying rental agreements, are delaying HMRC, but it's delayed and it's deferred. So it's not exactly kind of a clear runway for them. Once they get back, they're kicking the can down the road to the point that they're going to have to make profits to then repay some of the debts that they've incurred over the last 12 months, which is a really sad and tricky situation for them to be in. So it's definitely, I think it will be interesting to see what happens in terms of stability when things do come back, and the same knock-on effect for the hospitality sector, certainly with pubs and restaurants. Will they be able to open again in the same way? Certainly with social distancing, there's so much to consider that I feel is unknown, that just might be kind of worth keeping an eye out further down the road. One very last question, and conscious of time, was, as PPC spend dropped, how have people adapted? Are there more brands looking for an integrated approach in order to be a bit more savvy with spend? Of which I would say, I would assume the answer is absolutely yes. It makes sense to prioritize by value for what makes you revenue that may previously been in paid search, and trying to focus those efforts where you have time available on maybe to try to capture that traffic through organic search and reduce your reliance on spend. But I don't know if any of our panelists have anything in addition to add to that.
Maybe on the PR part of things. So I think Steve said it earlier that well, demand certainly was changing, but then the number of links or kind of backlinks necessarily didn't. And I think what what opportunity we were seeing that, and then that might be an advantage of us having lots of data from all the partners we work with, if that's Verbo or the others, is on the one hand, we had this uncertainty with customers that wanted to travel, didn't know where to, didn't know if they could because of restrictions, didn't know what price to expect, etc., when to book. And I think that's getting back to the angle of making it as frictionless and easy as possible for customers, and be very reactive. So reactive as in responsive. Yeah. So when we saw that and we had to pull back on paid marketing for now, we also said, well, why don't we double down on PR, on quite performance-based PR, but at the same time, we're trying to strengthen the profile of our sites. We built some backlinks when no one else is probably out there. We also saw most of the other brands pulled back on PR efforts. So there wasn't a lot of competition. Media outlets had staff on furlough as well when this first happened, and obviously that's now back a bit more. But at the same time, there was also this need for kind of data, for explanation, even for guidance. What are we expecting as a company in that travel sector? What are we seeing? And then turning that into nice media coverage and stories, which is obviously helping us long term to generate even more traffic once demand is coming back, hopefully. From unpaid channels. So if you will, there's a little bit of a shift from paid channels into organic channels, and that's certainly something we are trying.
Makes perfect sense, and we're bang on time. So thank you, and a big thank you to all of our panelists for joining us. So Steve, Colin, Tahir, Hannah and Felix, really appreciate your involvement. Massive thank you to Anna for putting together the report. Apologies, I'm sure, from Rob, who kind of maybe lost an internet connection halfway through. But yeah, thanks for everyone. Definitely check out the report if you haven't done so already. And yeah, we'll close things up there. So if you have any questions, we'll send a recap email. So feel free to reply. I'm more than happy to help. Thanks very much.